Good afternoon. My name's Joe. I'm an alcoholic. We thought Mark would want to start with a thought and maybe a little silence.
This reading is called Compassion. It says, once you've seen the face of God, you see that same face on everyone that you meet. The true God has no face. The true God has no name. But we cannot identify with that until we're of a very high level of insight. Until then, the gods with faces and the gods with names are still more worthy of veneration and study than the illusions of the world. With long and sincere training, it is possible to see the face of God. Holiness is not about scientific objectivity. It is about a deep and clear recognition of the true nature of life. Your attitude toward your God will be different than anyone else's God. Divinity is a reflection of your own understanding. If your experience differs from others, that does not invalidate your sense of godliness. You will have no doubts after you have seen. Knowing God is the source of compassion in our lives. We realize that our separation from others is artificial. We are neither separate from other people nor from God. It is only our own egotism that leads us to define ourselves as individuals. In fact, a direct experience of God is a direct experience of the utter universality of life. If we allow it to change our way of thinking, we will understand our essential oneness with all things. How does God look? Once you see God and know God, you will see that same face on every person that you meet. How about we take a couple minutes and do a meditation? Ask the God of our understanding to open our minds and hearts and provide us with some energy for this afternoon and allow us to have some fun and lightness with this incredible thing called life.
Without opening your eyes, staying in that place, which is the place where truth comes from, where God is, both in and outside of you, all around you. I would like to do just a short guided meditation on the pertinent points that we've covered. Is this work, as outlined in the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous, what I want to do? Am I willing to go to any length, even though I may not know what that might look like, to do this work and to seek God's will? Why? Why do I need to do this work? And why would the group or person that I've chosen? Am I willing to look at and begin to admit the areas of my life where I'm being dishonest with myself and others? Am I willing to ask that which I believe in my own way, from my own heart, for an open mind and a new experience with the things that I would like to have an open mind and a new experience with? Do I believe this book is laid out to show other alcoholics precisely how to recover, and that that's the main purpose of this book? Am I willing to admit from where I am now that in and of myself, without God, that I am nothing, and that without God I'm lost? Does my experience abundantly confirm that once I put alcohol and or drugs into my system, something happens where I lose control over the amount once I start? Am I willing to look at that with alcohol? Am I willing to look at that with drugs? Or whatever my problem might be? Whatever the symptoms of my problem might be? These are the symptoms, but it's very important to have a clear first half of step one. If I'm scattered with many, many issues and many, many problems, I will continue to feel scattered. I should start with my primary symptom. Am I willing to ask God to help me fully concede to my innermost self the truth of my first step? Am I convinced that I am not like other people? Or presently, has that idea been smashed? That drunk or sober, I'm an alcoholic and I cannot manage my own life. Am I convinced that at a certain time, and I might not know when that certain time might be, how it would feel, or what it would look like, that there will be no effective mental defense against the first drink or drug, and that no human being, no human power can provide that defense? And am I convinced that whatever it is that I'm powerless over, whatever the truth is in the first half of step one for me, that my defense must come from a higher power? Do I believe I'm suffering from an illness which only a spiritual experience can conquer? And do I have any other alternatives but the two on page 25 to go on the best I can, blotting out the consciousness of my situation as best I can, dying an alcoholic and or drug-addicted life, or number two, to live on a spiritual basis? Do I have any other alternatives? Is lack of power my dilemma? And do I need a power by which I can live? And am I committed to finding out where and how to find that power? Do I now believe, or am I even willing to believe, that there is a power greater than myself that can take me beyond where I am with everything I've seen in the first step? My trouble with personal relationships, my emotional nature, my dependencies, medication, love, effectiveness, work, passion, a passionate life, money, being of real help to other people, past where I am with fear. Do I believe God can take me past here? And not only do I believe, can He? Am I willing to face the doubt and reservations that I have about, will He, for me, as I am, with the truth that I've seen in step one? Am I willing to face my doubt? Am I willing to ask to be shown my current agnosticism? And do I see that my current agnosticism is the same and only a reflection of the current unmanageability, the manifestations of page 52 as they are now? Can I see that that is my agnosticism? Am I willing to face my current situation, surrendered to a self-imposed crisis that I can no longer blame on anyone else or anything else, that I can no longer postpone or that I can no longer evade? Am I willing without fear to face the proposition that God is either everything or He's nothing? To choose that He is, or to choose now that He isn't? If you're new, if you're old, if you're in between, please don't think that you can't choose either one. You can do the work from a place to be shown. You can do the work from a place that you choose God is nothing. You can choose that He isn't. You can choose to be shown. You will have a much easier time than those that think they're big-time true believers. Have I faced my doubt? Have I faced my prejudice, my worship of things, people, sentiment, money, myself, the worship I have of my mind, my ideas, my notes, what I've learned? Did I really mean what I said in my set-aside prayer? Do I really want an open mind and a new experience? Or do I want to just add to what I already know? Am I willing to abandon it all utterly? So with the work I've done up to this moment, up to this day, in the first step, body, mind, spirit, with the work I've done in the second step, with looking at what I've seen, drunk or sober, am I convinced that I'm an alcoholic and or a drug addict, or whatever your truth is, and that my life is unmanageable? Now, sober, can I move my life past where I am, even with the amount of power I currently have? am I willing to face at this point what I've done with grace, what I do with power, what I do with all that I've been given, and see that within the realization of the grace of God in my life, whether it's one day or 25 years, that in the middle of the realization of the grace of God in your life is where a fearless first step will be. If there's any fear left to face the proposition that God is everything or nothing, then there's a piece of self that has a reservation about alcohol. Because if you're afraid of drinking again, if you're afraid of facing any of this stuff, you will not meet the condition that says you must fearlessly face the proposition God is everything or nothing. And if there is fear, am I willing to look through it and see that there's a part of self that believes I, without God, can do something about those fears? Am I really convinced that no human power can relieve what I suffer from? No human power. And am I willing to believe that God not only can, but that He will for me if I seek Him? And do I believe God will give me the power to seek Him? Am I convinced that my life run on my will is not successful? With the power, with the grace that I've been given, if I've clearly seen the unmanageability that I currently have, if I've really seen the current agnosticism that I have, am I willing to believe that God can and will for me take me past where I am, and that my life as I currently am, when I'm running on self-will, outside of God's will, doesn't work? Can I see clearly that selfishness and self-centeredness is the root of what I suffer from? And that driven by 100 forms of fear, self-delusion, self-seeking, and self-pity, I step on the toes of my fellows and they retaliate, and that I make decisions based on self at some time in the past, which has placed me in a position to be hurt, confused, and baffled, and at the same time that suffering has created a desire to move past where I am, to be moved past where I am. Can I see the freedom in the fact that my troubles are of my own making, and that I am not a victim of the things that I've seen in that unmanageability, in that agnosticism, in that list of areas where I'm running my life on self-will, which will become my inventory? And I would like to ask that anyone who would like to join us after the decision, that we begin the third step prayer together. And this decision is the how and the why of it. And first of all, they will tell me why I need to make this decision. And the reason I need to make this decision is because playing God doesn't work. And how do I make this decision? I simply decide that from hereafter, from this place, with what I've seen, in the work up to this point, in the weekend up to this point, in my sobriety up to this point, I have seen that playing God doesn't work, and I'm ready to decide that from hereafter I would like God to be my director in ways that I might not even know. And I would like to be an actor who wants to quit trying to be a director. I would like to be an agent of God and have Him be my principal. And I would like to be His child, and I would like Him to be my Father. And am I willing to face and be rid of any old ideas I have about those principles and really make this decision? What would I like my Father to be? What does that mean to me? What would I like my director to be? How would I like to act? How would I like to be? How would I like to be directed? What would it mean for me to be His agent? What does it mean to be an agent of God? Is it an honor? Is it arrogant? Is it possible? Is it a reality? And to really be a child of God, if that idea could go from your head to your heart, that you are a child of God, you will never, ever have a problem with low self-esteem ever again. Because there's nothing you could ever do, get, accomplish, have, earn, work for, more than the realization in your heart that you are a child of God. Third step prayer. God, I offer myself to Thee,
to build with me, to do with me as Thou wilt. Leave me of the bondage of self, that I may better do Thy will. Take away my difficulties, that victory over them may bear witness to those I would help of Thy power, Thy love, and Thy way of life. May I do Thy will always.
I bow to the sound of the silence and the diamond of the lotus of my heart. Om Mani Padme Hum. There's no amen at the end of that prayer that we just did. And I believe that's because everything you do from the end of that prayer right now today to the end of the next time you say the 7-step prayer is part of one prayer. And in that prayer, I have always been safe and protected.
Fourth step. How many of you have written a resentment inventory? Oh, good.
He never has.
Who, you pointing at Larry?
Matthew.
How many are currently in inventory right now? A few of you. Hands didn't go quite as high, but that's okay.
Same number of hands that are back for the second time in their first year.
We're going to have a little fun with something which we call Theater of the Lie. It probably should be called Theater of the Truth, but...
or as he'll share with you, it probably should be called Theater of the Truth about the Lie, even if the truth about the lie is true.
There's some things I read in the big book I want to mention again so you'll have a sense of understanding. maybe give you an explanation. And again, the first time I saw this, and as I work with it, as I begin to write inventory, I begin to have some pretty significant experiences, which is why I use it, because it works. It really opened me up in terms of inventory. Face and be rid of that which has me blocked from God. And some of the things I just want to reiterate again is the book talks about, we're going to get down to causes and conditions. And if you look up the word condition, it'll refer to condition as a state of being. And then a little bit further on, I read that before you get into what I call the fourth column, the big book makes a reference. It says, in that state, the wrongdoing of others, fancy or real, has the power to kill. So I want to show you all a little bit how that plays out, if you will. If I went into most people's homes, or if I spent just a very minimal amount of time with you, I would be able to identify 6 or 8, I'll use the words of the big book, stage characters that your ego has manufactured that you think define who you are. If you stop and think about how the ego is developed at birth, the very first interaction is with the parents, and so the first stage character has been born. I'm a son or I'm a daughter. And you get a sense of who you are from an external source, right? And then let's say that you have brothers or sisters. Now you have another stage character that you think defines who you are. I'm a brother or I'm a sister. And then you go along a little bit longer and you get into high school, and I guess let's say that you're an athlete. Now you got another one that you think defines who you are. Or maybe you're a computer geek or a nerd, so now you've got another one that defines who you are. Then there's people like us, you know, we're the beer drinkers and the potheads and the antisocials, and you know, so now we've got, that's another one that defines who we are. And then the first time that you either have sex with yourself or another human being, you now have introduced to another one. Somewhere in there, at least if you're a male, because that's what I am this time around, from the very first time I had my first fight, I got introduced to another one. I like to call him Rambo. He got real well defined as I got into my alcoholism, then got sent to Vietnam, some other stuff. And you ladies have one too. It's called Xena. Some of you very cleverly disguise it, but you all have it. Let's see, and then you go on a little bit longer and you start dating, and let's say if you're in a relation, those of you who are just, quote, in relationships, but you haven't moved into stage 2, which is perhaps commitment, and then stage 3, which is engaged, and stage 4, which is marriage, soon to be followed by stage 5, divorce. But now you have another character that you think defines you. I'm a husband, I'm a wife, pay attention to not only yourself when you talk, pay attention to other people when they talk, and watch how often they will be talking about a human being and never mention their name and use the word my. My house, my wife, my ex, my, and won't even use their name. And they're completely asleep to what they're doing when they do that. And so then if you go along and in that marriage or in that relationships you have children, now you have another stage character. Now you're a parent, aren't you? You're a mom and you're a dad. And of course, somewhere along the line, if you're working, you have a career person, right? Somewhere along the line, most of us have a part of us that is very much identified with money. I am my money. And so, if I just walk into your house I can get a real sense of all the different stage characters that you think define who you are. And what are we having? We're having some fun here now. Cleaning lady? All right. So, are you getting an idea? Now, I want you to take a second. I want you to kind of think of your own stage characters, and I'll use myself as an example. And then I'll use Joe and I. So, I'm in the world to play the role that God has assigned. So, what are some of my roles? Well, I'm an alcoholic. I'm a member of Alcoholics Anonymous. Those are two different characters, by the way. I'm a spiritual man, Mr. AA. See? I definitely got a male Rambo in me. I am CEO of a company. Follow me? That defines who I am, correct? What else? I'm a writer. That's another one. I'm a sponsor. That's another one. I am my money. That's another one. I'm a jock. I'm an athlete. That's another one. That's a pretty good start. Every inventory that I've written, and the last one that I wrote, that inventory was written by different parts of those stage characters depending on what individuals or institutions hurt, threatened, or interfered with one of those states of being. I'll give you an example. I wrote some inventory on some employees who work with me. I'm probably not the only one in this room that's had to do that. What stage character do you think, if I have an employee, and my perception is that employee is not showing up, giving the company a fair day's job, or being slothful, or blah, 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 what stage character do you think is being impacted by that? The CEO, the business person. And my inventory revealed that he wasn't just a little disturbed by this behavior. Because what does he need to be to exist? He needs to be in that position. So anything that hurts, threatens, or interferes with that position, he will experience it as though he's fighting for his very life, because he is. That's he wrote some inventory. Now, Mr. AA has been writing inventory for years. Because, there's no police squads going around cleaning all this crap up, and there's just stuff going on in AA, and he's just never satisfied. See, and Mr. AA has an idea of how it's supposed to look, right? Follow traditions and follow the big book, and there's some groups in Dallas just not doing that. Can you imagine? And so he gets to write some inventory. But every time I write inventory, these different stage characters are the ones who write the pieces of inventory. Those of you that recently if you've gone through any relationship problems, I can assure you had a husband or a wife or a boyfriend or girlfriend that wrote some inventory that wasn't getting their way, remember? So that's the basic concept that I want you to think about as we're going to do some stuff in Theater of the Lie, and maybe give you an idea of what you're up against with this stuff. Maybe give you an idea of what the book means when it says resentment is the number one offender. Maybe give you an idea of what it means when it says in that state the wrongdoing of others, fancied or real, has the power to kill. So what I like to do when I do Theater of the Lie is I like to find someone who has maybe recently written some inventory they would be willing to share. Just so you know, I could pick anyone in this audience to do this with. You all have stage characters. You all got shit going on. I don't care who you are, because you can't defeat the ego. So I'd like to find someone who's recently written some. You want to volunteer? Come on up. Now, one of the first things we're going to find out is, go ahead and sit down. Some people call this the hot seat. So, your name's...
Stacy.
Okay. I want you to give us some general information about the various stage characters that you have operating.
Okay, I'm a mother.
Okay, we got mom. You got that?
Wife.
Wife.
Not yet divorced. Girlfriend.
Wait, say that again. You're divorced?
Not yet.
Oh, not yet.
No.
Okay. And then I heard a girlfriend?
No.
Oh, okay.
Have a boy. Well, yeah, I'm a girlfriend too.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry, I got confused. She's both a wife and a girlfriend with two different men. I got confused. You all get that one? Did you catch that? Yeah. You're an alcoholic?
I'm an alcoholic.
Okay.
I'm a member of Alcoholics Anonymous.
Spiritual woman?
Spiritual woman.
Yeah.
I have a Xena.
Oh
Yeah, I'm big Xena.
Yeah. Any hobbies, any of that kind of stuff?
Yeah. Then there's the work.
Okay.
There's my work, career.
What do you do?
I do billing, but then there's an antique business I'm starting.
Oh, okay.
So there's the antiquer.
Okay.
Let's see what else.
That pretty well define you?
Oh God, no, I'm sure there's a lot more there.
That'll be a good start for inventory. By the way, I want to distinguish something. This is in the area of sex. You know, that area never talked about in AA, because we all have celibacy as a sane and sound ideal, right? I want you to understand something. How many of you are married? Raise your hands. Okay. So you have a state of being called husband and wife. And virtually every belief system you have came from watching your mother and father and television and the culture and everything else. That's where your third column starts to roll out. But I want you to understand something. You've got a husband and wife. For you wives, I want you to know that your husband has never cheated on you. But the stud will in a minute, because he's got a whole nother agenda. You follow? The same true for your husbands. The wife would never, ever cheat on you because that is not in her belief system, but that little sex kitten would because she's got a different agenda. You follow me? See, any of you who are married that have ever written any inventory on your significant other, I assure you that you're writing out your third column. You have an idea of how a wife or husband's supposed to be. You have a complete script. Unfortunately, you never gave it to them, never told them about it. They don't fit it, and you're angry all the time. You see? And so that's some of the stuff that we're going to look at in here. So you got a pretty good idea of this. We got an interesting host of characters here. So, who are you resentful at?
Let's try the ex-husband first.
Okay. They're nameless, of course. I understand we're on tape, but can we just give him a name like Paul or something? Ivar. Okay. So he actually has a name. I've noticed this in particular with this concept of when it comes to exes, because see, if you give them a name, it's like they still exist or something. You know, it's always exes, you know. Do they have a name? Well, yeah, okay. So it's Ivers. Okay, he's column 1. Okay, give me some stuff in column 2. What are you angry about?
That he had an affair, that he left the country, that he's a kid.
We got some stuff going on here. What was
he's a child. He's irresponsible. Let's see, what else?
Okay, let's back up a minute. You said the first reason was what? He had an affair.
He had an affair.
Okay, I need someone to play the wife. Come here and play the wife. Just stand back behind here. Now, when I ask you to play a role, here's what I want you to think about. You're in a one-act play, and you got one role. You're the wife, period. You don't know any of the rest of these characters in this play with you. You have one role. It's the wife only. So when I ask you for a response, I want you to give me a response that a wife would give. Okay? Yeah, well, yes. So any response you give me is going to be the response of a wife. Okay? Now let's see. Pick someone to. Let's see. He had an affair. The wife is different from your sexuality. It's a whole other deal, right? So pick someone to represent your sexuality.
Oh, you want me to pick one?
Yes.
Okay. Does that be a woman or can it be a man?
I don't care. It's your inventory of your life. Pick someone. Okay, come on up. We'll call this the. Oh, now she has a resentment, right? So this is her sexuality. Call it the sex kitten, call it whatever. Her sexual energy. You got to understand what the first thing she's writing in column 2 is the husband had an affair, correct? So when I ask you for a response, what defines you is your sexual energy, how you perform in bed, blah 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 blah, right? Boy, see, she's having a hard time here. Right? She's having a hard time. Okay, let me think. Did this impact your children? Okay, so we need, pick the mother. The mother's different than the wife. Do you get it? See, you ladies have had split personalities for a long time. So we pick a mama. She has that look though, doesn't she? Come on. Okay. All right, pick someone else. Okay, you just go ahead and stand there. So again, when all this information comes up, your response is going to be strictly that of the mother, right? You're the mother, and the response I'm going to want from you is how this impacts you as the mother. You don't know about the sexual energy, and you don't know about the wife. You don't care. You got one role in this one act play, right? Okay. Now, what other things did you say in the second column?
Well, there's my spiritual. Second column.
Oh well, yeah. Let's stick with this. I want to show you. This is good. This is one piece of inventory, and I want to show you what she has been up against. And I know some of her history. She's been up against this a long time. Now we pick someone to play the spiritual woman. Yeah. It's always interesting who they pick. That's always kind of interesting. Now you've got Xena. Oh, yeah. Find a Xena. Find an angry woman. Oh. She says, oh, who, me? Angry? Yeah. Okay. Squeeze in here.
Is Xena the equivalent of Rambo, but
yes.
female? Uh-huh.
Yeah. So your role within this multiple personality disorder is to protect and defend. Period. Correct? You're that female Xena part. You've got one too, so you know what I'm talking about. So when I translate, when you get this information that's going to roll in, what I'm going to want from you is your reaction to that as Xena, right? Okay, what else? So what do we got? We got Xena, we got the mother, we have the sexuality, we have the wife, and we have the spiritual woman.
Where's Miss AA?
We don't. Well, we're calling her the spiritual woman, Miss AA. And then, huh? Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah. Pick a career woman.
I'm never emailing you again.
How did you find out about the affair?
My business partner told me.
Oh no! Ouch! Oh no! Let's see. Now,
Mark has a nose for who to pick in the chair, doesn't he?
Yeah. And what did you do?
Retaliation is always a good way for revenge, I guess. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I see. We'll develop that out a little more, too. So, let's see. Actually, I think we've got a pretty good cast here. So, So I'm going to repeat. This is the alcoholic, right? To drink is to die. Correct? So we got Zena. We know what Zena is all about. Mama. Right? Know what Mama's all about. Sex kitten. We know what she's about. Wife. We know what wife's about. Miss AA. We can almost hear what she's going to say already. And, of course, this is career woman. I am my money. I am my career. Correct? So here's what happens. And she's merrily going along, and everything was hunky-dory, and then this just kind of comes up. Did this catch you by surprise?
Completely.
Oh, yeah. Oh, this is even better. So I'm the business partner, and how did you get approached on this?
How did she tell me?
Yeah.
She was wondering why I didn't want to have a little thing with the bartender downstairs, because didn't she know what my husband was doing?
Ah. Okay. So here's when you think back on when you were first told this information, who did you get the first response from? Which stage character?
Zena.
Are you sure? Did you go to anger? Well, you probably did quickly, right? Okay? Who was crushed?
The wife. The mother.
Okay, let's start.
The wife.
Okay. Okay. Because I was thinking to myself when I was told this need. I've done this. See, it's just I've been her. I was trying to think of who was impacted first, and
he's been her and him.
Yeah. I think the husband took the full brunt first. So, you're the wife, right? And keep in mind, normally what I would do is I would take the alcoholic also, and I would put the alcoholic back behind each stage character. Because what's going to happen is who they are, what defines them, their state of being, it's completely tied into her being married to a man who's loyal and faithful. Get it? And now we have some new information. So, imagine that you have just heard that he is having an affair. What is your reaction to that?
How could you do that to me? I gave you the best years of my life, you son of a bitch.
And I imagine there would have been just to even touch more passion to that. Now I want you to think about this. When this happened, in order for her to exist, she needs a husband. His action said, pay attention. We get drunk, loaded, wind up in penitentiaries, kill people over this shit. His action said what to her? She doesn't exist. You are dead. She is fighting for her life, right? Okay. Who was probably the second one that reacted? You had the wife first?
Mother.
What's your reaction to this news?
How could you have done this to me and the children? How could you have destroyed our family? How dare you? How dare you?
Yes. Good. Good. And you'll notice both their positions initially started out as victims. Right? And in each of these stage characters, with the exception of Zena, who has one objective, which is to relieve him of something, a lower part of his anatomy, they will vacillate between judgment and victimization. Go into your own experience. How many of you have had this, I've been cheated on? Raise your hands. And the rest of you are liars. Or you didn't know. Okay, so we saw the reaction from the wife, and then we saw the reaction from the mother. What was probably the third reaction? Was Zena starting to rear her head a little bit here?
Well, what's revenge? Where does, that kind of...
That is Zena, yeah. Okay. So now that those two have shared in their way, and you notice theirs was a touchy anger, but some victimization, right? How could you do this to me? I've been married to you all these years. I've done all this stuff for you, and, of course, Mama. Now, what do you have to say about this?
Oh, God. Don't be...
What's Zena going to do? Have you ever been in this position?
Yes.
Well, you know what to say.
You fuck. I'd chop your dick off. I'd probably retaliate. Yeah. I'm going to hurt you just like you hurt me, you bastard. Yeah. And then I hope you die. I want to watch you bleed.
You're gonna fucking die.
You dead, motherfucker.
Yeah.
Now,
that's inventory.
That's inventory. Now, let's see. So at some point in time, we're not quite ready for her yet. This little sexual energy over here, because see, I'll tell you why. Something has to happen here. When he had an affair with another woman, what did he say to her? Bingo. She's fighting for her life. Now, Zena is going to give her a little juice. See? Zena's going to start rapping to her, but what is your initial reaction to all this, to this fact that he had a sexual affair with another woman?
Devastated.
Yeah.
Hurt, feel unattractive, feel ugly. Bingo. Disgusting, non-existent.
Yeah, not fast enough, tall enough, buns aren't tight enough, blah, 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 right?
I think she's got another belief.
Huh?
No. He just lost the best he ever had.
Yeah.
Right?
But we're not there. I want to show you something. Your initial reaction to stuff, we've all been through this, is going to start out, it's going to act like it's a little bit of anger, it's almost shock, and it normally starts out as victimization, with the exception of Zena. Because Zena don't know that. But think of your initial one, right? The wife, right? You know, how dare you do this all these years? It's a victimization stance, right? You did it to me. And then the mother, you did it to me. And now we have missexuality. You follow me? I'm not enough. I'm not enough. Now, Zena starts to stir that anger. Retaliation, right? Starts to stir the pot here. Because they'll all wind up having two faces. Now, were you guys in business together? Oh, yeah. So, now we've got Miss Career Woman. Now, of course, keep in mind the reality of this. When you hear that your husband and business partner, who's also happens to be your business partner's had an affair, that's probably going to have an impact on your pocketbook. Correct? So what's your reaction to this?
Oh, my God. How are we going to do this? Get things together? He's probably going to take everything. Okay. What am I going to do to live on? Who's going to feed the kids? Good. Who's going to pay the bills? Good.
Now, I want you to keep something in mind. She's been by herself when she had this experience, and all this stuff's going on. Follow me? She's by herself, right? Where were you at when you heard this information? In London. Okay, you were in London. But you get it? All this stuff goes on in your head, and you just shift. You're shifting from one to the other, right? Okay, now, of course, we're going to hear from the spiritual woman. See? Who has deep understanding, compassion, and what's that standard line the spiritual woman throws out? You know, they're just. So, what is your reaction to this?
Oh my God, what am I supposed to do here?
No.
God, please guide me. Tell me what to do. I got to call my sponsor. I got to run to a meeting. I got to read the big book. I got to get on my knees. And all this stuff is going on all at the same time on top of all of this other stuff. And I don't think I could do this. I don't know if I could handle this. I don't know if I could stay sober through this. But I'll try.
And how will your denial show up? How would your denial show up being the spiritual woman? You're a spiritual woman, right? So what have you learned in AA about people who do things?
He's spiritually sick. He needs to go to AA. He needs a program. He needs to call his sponsor. He needs to stop drinking. He needs to go to Sexaholics Anonymous.
Zena's real clear what he needs. So this is what happens, and behind all this, because this is painful stuff. You've been through it. This is painful stuff. We're having a lot of fun, but this is painful, gut-wrenching stuff, because my sense of identity, who I am, is coming out here, and this is an act that has me fighting for my life, and I assure you, if the pain gets bad enough, behind every one of these stage characters, or if the fear gets bad enough, is this alcoholic saying, screw it, let's go get drunk. Let's go get drunk. Let's go get drunk, right? Now there's another stage you're going to move to. We heard victimization initially. And I promise you, and Zena is she's the one who will use her energy and fuel to do this, and ego, rebuilding quickly, right? So I don't know how long it took her, but not too far down the road, I want to go back to these same characters, but I'm looking for a whole other response, right? I'm looking for a response from the sex kitten that goes something like this. God damn, there's 2.5 billion men out there. Rock and roll. He wasn't that good anyhow. You know that little cutie down the bar? Let's go, baby. God, buy some lingerie. Yeah. Break out the Karma Sutra. Rock and roll. Follow me? So that's one piece, right? Mother's going to have another response from an aggressive standpoint. It's going to be me and the kids. See how that looks? I'm going to present to the world I'm a single mother. Got my chest stuck out. I'm a single mother. See? Guy cheated me. I'm a single mother. Right? See?
What does Zena do to the next lover that the sex kitten has?
Follow me?
I'm going to tear that motherfucker up. And there's only so many ways you can say some things, right? I'm going to fuck him up.
And fairly quickly, probably, an attorney had a little chat with the career woman. So what would you sound like now?
Well, I really need money, and I've never done anything like this before, and my bank is empty, and I need to take care of the kids, so I really need to have the whole business.
See, and I don't know how long did it take for all this just to play out?
It's still playing out.
Okay, how long ago did it start?
6 years ago.
Do you see what she deals with? You see, in the course of a day, she deals with, in that state, the wrongdoing of others, fancy or real, has the power to kill.
And if she doesn't see her troubles in that situation were of his own making, and she waits around holding her breath for him to make amends or change, woo.
See?
It'll be a long wait.
See, and this is the tragedy of the ego. This is why resentment is the number one offender. Can you imagine the inventory? Look at what we've seen off a few words. He had an affair on me. Look at the impact. Look how she experiences this mentally and emotionally. Right? Look at the up and downs just of the career woman, the money. Oh my God, what are we going to do? We're in business together. Some bitch, I'll kick you, just back and forth. And the wife, my God, what she's gone through. I wasted all those years. How could I have been so dumb? And then the sexual energy piece. feeling, it's about, because everything's about us, right? So it's about me, it's about me, it's about me. I'm talking the initial reaction, not down the road a little bit when she's out buying lingerie and Kama Sutra, but, and then the spiritual woman, you got combinations of things. One is, well, he's a sick man, and forgive and forget, and all that stuff, and Zena's hollering in her ear, screw that, kill him. And she's conflicted. You follow me? And if you've gone through a divorce, you know what I mean? You'll do your best, and you're trying to get along. The next thing you know, you both lose it, say some of the most horrendous, horrible things to each other over the phone. What do you think that's all about? See?
So, question. Every one of those personalities has self-esteem, pride, ambition, security, personal relations, sex relations, and pocketbook.
Yeah.
That were hurt, threatened, or interfered with.
Because, see, this is such a beautiful one because these characters define so much of who she is, and this act, him having an affair, was life-threatening to every single one of them. Let me tell you the truth in this kind of stuff. About a year ago, my pal Floyd from Houston, Texas, he sends me an article. About a half-a-page write-up. And the story is of a fairly prominent dentist in Houston, Texas, who basically came home and said to his wife, I want a divorce. I'm going to go with another woman. And it was somewhere around 3 to 6 months after that, the wife took a gun, killed their 2 children, and killed herself. And I'm reading this article. And here's what the article says. She didn't work, so she was a wife. She was a devoted mother, a devoted member of the church, and loved her home. And this man came home, and in one sentence, the 4 things that identified every part of her being, he said did not exist. And the power of this is 3 months later, she killed those 2 children and killed herself. This is real. You experience the 3rd column as a state of being. Do you get it? You experience it. Therein lies the tragedy of the ego. You see why resentments are the number 1 offender? You see what's just played out here? Do you see why the book says we uses the word permit, says we can't afford the luxury of this? Can you imagine what this woman's gone through for 6 years behind this? If you don't know how to write inventory, you can get free of this. I have my own experience with this. One of my exes whose name was Carla, ran off with a man I used to sponsor to Montana. You want some inventory? I'll give you some inventory. Now I want to tell you how this works. About 15 months later, they came back. 2 months after that, he came to me and made amends, and I wound up taking him through the steps again. Now, I didn't stay married to her, but we made amends, and she still calls me as a spiritual advisor today. You see? That's getting drunk stuff. You know what I'm saying? See, because I love that woman. If I didn't have this process, I'd have been crazy. See? But this stuff is very real. You see how real this is? You all got your own experience. You start to see what you're up against. You follow me? All these different states of being. In that state, the wrongdoing of others, fancy real, has the power to kill. Let's give them all a hand. Let's take a break. Okay. I'm Mark, alcoholic. Did you learn anything from that visual exercise with Theater of the Lie? Good. It really shows you what you're up against with a resentment, doesn't it? What I do want to tell you something. There's a line in the fear inventory that we're in the world to play the role of God as a sign. And there is a state of consciousness that we've talked about in the 10th, 11th step in which you can play the role that God has assigned, but you are not attached to the role. And what that means is you can drop it in 30 seconds. You're not attached to the role. The role does not define you. You'll work with the role for as long as you're in the role. And when it's over, and you're right on to the next one. You're in a one-act play, and you know it. You see the difference? You see the difference in that whole thing? See, her response could have been, God bless you, go in peace. Boom, spun, moved. Cease fighting anything or anybody, right? See the difference? But theater of the lie opened me up to what I'm up against with my ego and my self-will and my selfishness. And why I seem to have gone through so much of my life, literally fighting for my life. At work, in relationships, unbelievable stuff. And it brought a lot of freedom into my life. It made writing inventory fun. Matter of fact, when we first got introduced to this and really began to have a lot of fun writing inventory, and I mean fun, we would ask each other, who's mad? You know? And we started to have a lot of fun with those roles, and our life got lighter. And I'll give you an example real quick of how this translates. When I got sober, I went to work for this company. I'd worked for them about 8 to 8.5 years. And when that job ended, I almost got suicidal. I was so identified with that job and did not even know it. Sound asleep to that. I was working 60 to 70 to 80-hour weeks, and I thought that job defined who I was. And when I wasn't doing that job, I can't even tell you the depression that set in. I literally thought I was dying, and I didn't have a clue why. I still had these, quote, other components of my life, I thought. But when you're working in something 60, 70, 80 hours a week and you're sound asleep and you think it defines you and it ends, you'll experience it as fighting for your life. A lot of people committed suicide behind careers ending. So pay attention to some of what we did. If you'll work with it, I think you'll also find that writing inventory not only would be easier, but could be a little bit more fun for you. But I hope most of all you see what you're up against in a daily basis with a self-will intact. And what the big book means, what it says when it says, in that state the wrongdoing of others, fancy real, has the power to kill.
Thanks, Mark. I'm Joe. I'm an alcoholic. Let me say one thing about the guided meditation that we did before we said the third step prayer together. A lot of people think that the tools of how to work with the doctor's opinion and Bill's story and there is a solution and more about alcoholism and the chapter to the agnostic and everything up to the third step, because really it's really just a series of considerations that would help you fully concede to your innermost self A, B, and C. And then, are you convinced? The first requirement, the decision, the prayer. And I did that with you because I wanted to say, I think the most important work after you've done, let's say for lack of a better term, you've done the mechanical work in those chapters. You've marked statements into questions and what you relate to in Bill's story and what your resistance was and how that changed when you were done with step one, and you've done what you've done with We Agnostic, and you've done what you've done with the 4 parts of the third step. A lot of people think saying the third step prayer every day is taking the third step. No. That's like thinking that admitting you're powerless over alcohol, you've taken the first step. But we all know there's a lot more to the first step. We all know there's a lot more to the third step than just... The prayer is the affirmation of the end. And isn't it funny? I've always thought it ironic that after the prayer, they say, we thought well before taking this step. And that's what we've done up to the moment we did that prayer this weekend. We've thought well about everything up to that prayer. We didn't want that statement after the prayer to be a surprise. We wanted you to think well before we did that prayer. But the prayer is not the decision. A lot of people think taking the third step is turning their will and their life over to the care of God. You hear it all the time. It's just a decision. And we saw this weekend the decision comes before the prayer, and as a matter of fact, the third step promises come before the prayer. So what are the third step promises based on? The third step promises are based on everything up to and including the third step decision. The prayer is an affirmation that those promises have begun. So I think the mechanical work is important, but I think the most important work, what we call in my home group, is the prayerful work. When you go back to those questions you marked. When you go back to the truth about what you related to in Bill's story. When you go back to how and if the resistance has changed in 9 to 16. When you go back to, does my experience abundantly confirm? Slowly, slowly, in prayer, in a contemplative way. Each of those considerations we went through in the guided meditation. A lot of people have trouble finding where are the first two steps. Well, doesn't it make sense, and I know this is really complicated, that everything up to the third step could be 1 and 2? It's a hard idea to grasp, but because from then on it's pretty simple. Now we got step 3. This is step 4, 5, on and on. Okay. Now, if I'd like you to imagine this. Let's go to. I'm really going to try. I'm really going to try and do this now. I'm going to try and do this. Let's go to page 64. God help me do this. I'm opening this book. I'm opening the book. I'm right here in the book. We're on page 64. Last paragraph. What Mark covered in the Theater of the Lie is from 1, 2, 3, 4. We might as well read the paragraph. Resentment is the number one offender. That's what he was showing you. He showed you how it destroys more alcoholics and their personalities than anything else. From resentment, I think it's important in this book to know what it is in any sentence. And I would like to pose a question, what some of you think it is and how it works. A lot of people will say it's how the program works. I have a different experience with how it works. I think it and how it works is how God works through this program. From it stem all forms of spiritual disease, for we have not only been mentally and physically ill, we know what those are now, mental obsession, physical craving. We also know what the spiritual malady is. We're not going to skip over that. It ain't a twofold disease. It's a threefold disease. We've been spiritually sick. What is it called? The spiritual malady. A lot of people in my group in Santa Monica misinterpreted that for a long time, and they talked about a sick spirit. It is impossible for your spirit to be sick. What is within you is 100% divine. The spiritual malady is being shut off from that which is 100% spiritually divine. Your spirit can't be sick. Spirit can't be sick. Spirit is spirit. The malady is, the problem is that I'm shut off from it. And I live from my body, my mind, and my emotions. I'm dominated by 3 dimensions. We've entered a 4th dimension of existence. We've entered the world of the Spirit. In dealing with resentments, we set them on paper. What did Mark cover? We listed people, institutions, or principles with whom we were angry. Column 1. Stay in the first column till nothing more comes. People are people. I believe if the name comes, don't question it. Don't ever let any sponsor edit your inventory or your list. If it comes, it comes. It needed to come. You trust your prayer. You've done the work. You've made a decision. Make the list. Stay in the first column consciousness. That doesn't mean some other first columns might not come for the rest, even before the 5th step. Might come during the 2nd column, 3rd column, 4th column, fear, this relationship inventory. I don't call the sex inventory anymore because I haven't had sex for a long time. By choice. I have a choice. Fuckers. 2nd column, we asked ourselves why we were angry. Institutions can be groups of people. I'm not going to start listing some of those groups of people because the wrong ones came to my mind just then. I'm in inventory. Principles or values and beliefs and stuff that's been pushed on you even in sobriety that you resent sometimes. Meeting makers make it. There's a great one. People that have to do the work. Don't even question if all you're doing is emptying your consciousness. And a really valuable tool for those of you that have been around that think it has to be a resentment to be on this list. A lot of you in this room don't live with deep-seated resentment anymore because you can't stand it for very long. Use some other words. Who's let you down? Who are you discouraged with? Who are you jealous of? Use other words to generate the first column. Let down by. Jealous of. Discouraged with. Let the list come. Don't question. Is it a major Is it a major resentment? Right? If it comes, it comes. You're just asking. The prayer is even there. Where's the prayer? The prayer is there. No. It's a strenuous effort to face and be rid of the things in ourselves which have been blocking us. That's the prayer. Dear God, please help me face and be rid of the things in myself which have been blocking me from you, myself, and God. Then what he laid out there was, so that's column 1 and 2. He was laying out where he found that in every case, self-esteem, pocketbook, ambition, personal relations, including sex, were hurt, threatened. Then there's a kind of a confusing paragraph because they repeat themselves a little bit. And he said opposite each name, self-esteem, which they've already given you, security, which is a new one, ambition, which is a new one, personal relations, which is repeated, sex relations, which had been interfered with. So they've given you 3 words to work with. When I resented so-and-so for such and such, did it hurt, threaten, or interfere with my self-esteem? Then you'll find pride. A lot of people don't write pride. It's all the way down at the bottom across from my wife, in the example. So you got self-esteem, pride, ambition, security, personal relations, sex relations, pocketbook. Do you always find all 7? Not always. Our group started to do a different thing with pocketbook. We looked at it as price. And we started to look at when she did such and such, did it hurt, threaten, or interfere with? Was there any price that I didn't want to pay? It's not always money. Emotional price. I wasn't willing to take the emotional responsibility to look at why. I think pocketbook, if you look at it as what price did you pay, leads right into the 4th column thinking. But we don't want to get complicated with that. And he laid out the 3rd column. But keep in mind, if you go back through your life and you're thorough and honest, what he did was, and this is the line that helped the guys that first started writing out the 3rd column, they got to this line, bottom of 65, and they read the line, when we were finished, we considered it carefully. And they said to themselves, well, the 4th column instructions are 2 pages away. What is it they want us to consider carefully now that we've done the first 3 columns? Well, should we be more specific with the 1st column? They talked about that. Should the 2nd column be specific rather than wordy? They talked about that. Someone at the time in that kitchen was reading Gurdjieff, and Gurdjieff used to talks about 1,000 eyes in one ego. And somebody said, well, why don't we just answer why after self-esteem? And that's how writing out the 3rd column came about. When I resented her for leaving me, and it affected my self-esteem, they started to ask why. And they found out the big lie. And the big lie is this. When you think it's low self-esteem, it's usually rooted in high self-esteem. When you think it's high self-esteem, it's usually rooted in low self-esteem. Not to complicate it, if you can just put the 7 words the first time you're doing the work and you got a big first column, great. If you've been around, you want to try something new, you want to try something a little different, something that's come to me from my own experience. You know what we forget sometimes? The guy that's going to speak tonight has a brother in Dallas, and they have a group, and at the beginning of the group, they read what we've all heard so many times, which I believe is on page 164, and it says in the 2nd paragraph, our book is meant to be suggestive only. We realize we only know a little. God will constantly disclose more to you and to us. But there's some people that are so locked into the words in the big book rather than the spirit. You mention one thing that you've experienced that's not word for word in the book, and they're like, they go crazy. And they forget the statement these people gave us when they ended the first 164 pages. Because I'll tell you this, there are people sitting here that have been doing the work 3, 4, 5 times longer than anybody had when the first 164 pages were printed. And more has been revealed constantly. Writing out the third column can only help. Helps you identify those personalities he laid out for you. Yeah. Keep this in mind. Don't ever forget this. Nobody had more than 4 years when they claimed to be recovered. Nobody had more than 4. Bill got sober in 35, am I right? The book was published in 39, right? The first 164 pages haven't been changed since 1939, right? So, the writers of this book, nobody had 5 years. There are people with 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50, 55, 60 years doing what's in this book. We know them. We know a lot of them. You know a lot of them. More has been revealed. Don't get locked into the Word. You're looking for the Spirit. Share where it takes you. Right. Then they make an interesting statement, which I never got past in years and years and years of therapy and becoming a therapist. The farthest I ever got in therapy was the first 3 columns. What's the problem today, darling? Well, I'm getting in touch with some anger that when I was 10 years old, my dad was 70 because he was 60 when I was born, and he wasn't there when I was 10 for the baseball games, and he didn't show up for this, and he didn't teach me that. Well, how did it make you feel? And we would sit there and do column 1, 2, 3, column 1, 2, 3, column 1, 2, 3, and most therapists, all you've done is buy a good friend who needs to stay in business. And for them to stay in business, you can't get free. But there are some therapists who will help you get free. Some of us have been to some that say, darling, that's about all I can do. You belong in Alcoholics Anonymous. God bless them. God bless therapists that are still in therapy. God bless teachers that still are students. God bless sponsors that are still sponsees. You got some sponsors that don't have sponsors anymore. My home group in Santa Monica is filled with them. They think their sponsor left for someplace. Lady came out recently to do a retreat for them from Denver. She realized she'd never had a sponsor. She'd been through the work umpteen times. Her husband had been her sponsor, and they've recently divorced. She's wondering about sponsorship. She's been through the work with all kinds of people, men and women. Someone in Denver told her that the group in Santa Monica she was going to do a retreat for knew a lot about sponsorship. She gets out there, 30 people from my home group at a monastery sitting in a circle, and she told them that she was interested in finding out about sponsorship for the first time in 30 years. She'd been through the work umpteen times, and that she heard this group knew a lot about sponsorship. They went around the room. Nobody in the room had a sponsor anymore. His Holiness the Dalai Lama. He's still a student. When the teacher is no longer a student, it gets really scary, right? But not very many therapists, unless they're directing you toward God and truth, will ever go farther than to conclude that others were wrong was as far as most of us ever got. And that was true for me. That's as far as I usually got. What's the outcome of that? People will continue to wrong you, and you'll stay angry. Sometimes it'll even be remorse. And then you'll just turn it inward, which is self-centeredness. Then you're mad at yourself. But the more you fight and try to have your own way, the worse matters get. As in war, the victor only seemed to win. Our moments of triumph were short-lived. Is it clear to me that when my life includes deep resentment, it led only to futility and unhappiness? Then it tells you what happens when you do that, and it's fatal. Now, before we get into turning back to the first 3 columns to find the key to the future, that sounds pretty important. Mark always says that. The next part of the inventory is a key to the future. Key to the kingdom. One of the keys to the kingdom. I'd like to describe something. Imagine the scenario that he painted for you right out here. You had the wife that was angry. You had the different personalities. Now imagine that over here he would have put the husband.
Or the boyfriend.
Or the boyfriend. You know, the motherfucker that did the cheating, right? Right? If we had him over here, right? If we had the bastard over here. Now, he would have had some kind of resentment. Maybe she drove me away. Now, isn't it interesting? This is a new piece I just saw not too long ago at his place. If you have two people in a relationship, and a lot of you are, this is tricky, and you really got to see it, and having written some inventory to see it. Her second column would be his fourth, and his second column would be her fourth. She's writing the lie for her as the truth for him, and he's writing the lie for him as the truth for her in the second column when you got two people on the same path. It doesn't help each other person. It's just a nifty thing to think about. But maybe if she read her second column to him and they were sharing inventory together, it might help him with his fourth column. He was selfish, he was this, he was that, he was this. That's her lie. That's what she's stuck in, but that's what he needs to see. So here's the picture. He's got his own resentment. There'd be personalities around him too. Mr. AA, Rambo, the businessman. Now, why were they having trouble with this personal relationship? Imagine this picture. One morning, the businessman, who has a 9 o'clock, 11 o'clock, 4 o'clock, 7 o'clock appointments, wakes up to the sex kitten. She wants to make love. He's got to make business. So they're like this. And remember, what we're describing here is when you are not at one. You're not at one. She's resentful for this. He's resentful for that. They're blocked. They're not at one. The committee comes to the surface. The meeting starts. Different chairman every day. Next morning, his Romeo wakes up to her businesswoman. They're like this. He wants one thing, she wants another. They're not at one. And the only time you have a good day is when the two right personalities wake up at the same time. You see it? You see it? Romeo has to wake up to Juliet, right? Or they might have a wonderful day if Mr. AA woke up with Mrs. AA, and they're going to have like an AA day, right? Whatever that would be, you know, they're going to just live and let live, right? They're going to go to 4 meetings or something. I don't know what they're going to do. Maybe they would even pray and meditate together. That'd be pretty cool, right? Pray and meditate together with the closest person in your life. Ooh, God, we can't do that. We keep our spiritual programs separate. He's one of the closest people in my life. We love to pray and meditate together. I don't want to meditate with some strangers, you know. I like to. It's usually showing off, though, when you meditate in a group. Who's sitting right? There's always the perfect I don't want to get into all that today. My buddy, where's my buddy? He knows about that. And in any kind of sangha or anything, there's always I'd be in the back with these Tibetan boys playing tic-tac-toe and throwing spitballs in the meditation room. But they got to wake up on the right day. And every one of them has a different belief about the resentment. Rambo wants to do this just like the ones he laid out. Right? So they all have different beliefs going on. They all got different personalities waking up at different days. And they're having trouble with the personal relationship. Each one of the personalities is going to have a different reaction. Right? There's another reason they have trouble in that personal relationship. So how do you come to one? How do you come at one? How do you get free? And the man that shared this with us talked about watching a friend of his who was 26 years sober who became a speaker. And you know, real speakers never turn down an AA request. That's the motto among speakers. Fuck the family, fuck your children, screw everything else up, but don't turn down an AA request. They're not free. They don't operate by intuition. Am I supposed to go? Am I not supposed to go? They got to go. And this guy became a speaker. And he was told by his doctor to be in the hospital at 6 p.m., but he had to go speak. He needed appendicitis operation. He went to speak. His appendix burst. He was put in the hospital. They had nothing for that back then, peritonitis or whatever it's called. It took him 16 days to die. This man hadn't done this work. This man hadn't seen those personalities. And our friend got to go sit with that man. He was in and out of consciousness, and he would come to and he would say things like, you know, I wasn't the greatest father in the world, but you know what? I wasn't the worst either. And another personality would be smashed. And you know, I wasn't the greatest AA member, but I wasn't the worst, and I did the best I could. And another one would die. And we get to do that right here, in the grace of God. That man had to die on his deathbed before he got free. Because you know what the ego wants? The ego loves if you're either a piece of shit or the greatest boyfriend in the world. It loves it. You know what's a really hard third column to do on the back of the page after you've seen the lies on the first page? Write an honest third column. Your ego will kick up more than anything in the third column. Hey, I'm just a guy trying to do the best he can. Makes mistakes. Boy, your ego will hate mediocrity because it loves it. It wins if you're a piece of shit or the greatest. It wins either way. It's a no-win situation on that one end of the scale or the other. Right? We get to get free of those. So how do they start to die? How do they start to die? Now imagine this. This is